happened, she did what she always did. She protected him, told the police she had invited him in, that it wasn't breaking and entering, that I was overreacting. And just like that, the cops' hands were tied, because if she let him in, it wasn't a crime. I couldn't even look at her. I wanted to scream at her to make her understand, to force her to see what I saw, but she never would. She would never stop protecting him. No matter how many times he stole from us, no matter how many thousands of dollars I poured into fixing his mistakes, no matter how many times he wrecked our home literally, since he once smashed holes in the walls during a drug-fueled rage, no matter how many retirement plans I had to postpone just to clean up his mess, she would always choose him, and I was done. I looked her in the eyes and told her me or him, and she just stood there crying, shaking, not choosing. And that was all the answer I needed. I walked upstairs, grabbed my bag, and packed what I could. I just walked out. And now I'm here in a dingy hotel room trying to figure out where the hell I go from here. I've spent my entire life working my ARS off, just to get robbed by my own son and my wife. The woman I thought was my partner, she refused to see it, she refused to admit it, she refused to choose me. So now I have nothing, not my home, not my marriage, not my family, just this. And I don't even know if I did the right thing. Should I leave her for good? Should I even bother trying to fix something that's been broken for years? Because right now I feel like I lost everything tonight, but maybe I never really had it to begin with. Update, it's been a few days since I left my home, and I wish I could say I found some peace. But the truth is, things have only gotten worse after walking out that night. I barely slept. My mind kept replaying the scene over and over. So the next morning I made it official. I filed for divorce. It wasn't a spur of the moment decision. I knew deep down that there was nothing left to save. My marriage had died a long time ago. I was just the last one to realize it. I was done, but my wife, she wasn't. I don't know what finally clicked for her. Maybe it was the reality of being alone, or maybe she thought she still had a chance to fix this mess. But instead of accepting the divorce, she decided to try and fix our son. She called him, she begged him, she promised that if he just came home, if he just agreed to go to rehab, things could still be okay, that we would help him. I don't know if she actually believed that or if she just needed to believe it. He came home that night. I wasn't there. I heard about everything from her after the fact. They sat in the living room and she pleaded with him, told him he had to stop that. He had to change that. She couldn't protect him anymore. She told me later that for a second she thought she got through to him. He looked at her, his hands still shaking, his face pale and sickly, and for just a moment she thought he might actually listen. Then he snapped, he screamed at her, called her a bee for turning on him, and accused her of abandoning him like I did, and then he pushed her. It wasn't hard enough to really hurt her, but it was enough to finally make her see what I had seen for years. She collapsed onto the floor, and before she could even react, he ran. She hasn't seen him since, neither have I. When she called me the next morning, she was a wreck, sobbing, completely broken. She begged me to come back to rethink the divorce. She told me I was punishing her for loving her son, that she wasn't a bad mother. She was just doing what any mother would do. I listened. I let her say everything she needed to say, and when she was done, I told her the truth. I told her she ruined him, that all the years of babying him, excusing him, and defending him had turned him into the person he is, now that she had shielded him from consequences his entire life, and this was the result, and then she lost it. She went from sobbing to screaming, accused me of blaming her for everything. I didn't even react. I just listened because I felt nothing for her. No anger, no sadness. I hung up on her from this point forward. I'll only deal with her through my lawyer. She's refusing to sign the divorce papers. Says she doesn't want to give up on our marriage, that we can fix things if we just talk, but there's nothing left to fix. And the house, it's going up for sale. Neither of us can afford to buy the other out. She doesn't have the savings, and I won't spend another penny fixing this mess, so we'll split the money, and once it's done, we'll go our separate ways. I thought I would feel heartbroken that after so many years walking away from my wife would leave me empty. But I don't feel empty. I feel nothing. Maybe a bit of relief? Update. I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe to get it out of my head before it settles into too deep. Maybe because this is the last thing I'll ever post before I delete it all. A few days ago, I got a call from the hospital. My wife had attempted self-harm. She was the one who called. Emergency services, I don't know if it was panic or second thoughts, but she saved herself at the last moment. I wasn't expecting to get the call. I thought after everything she would have changed her emergency contact, But I guess out of habit or something else, it was still my number listed, so I went. I don't know why, but I did. When I got there, the doctor told me she was stable. No immediate danger, they were keeping her for observation, but physically she was fine. I stood in that hospital room for a while just watching her sleep. She looked small, tired like the weight of everything had finally sunk in, but too late. I didn't feel much of anything. No sadness, no anger. Just numb. Once I knew she was okay, I stepped outside and called her sister. We hadn't spoken in years, but she picked up immediately. I told her where my wife was, that she needed someone, and that I was leaving. I don't know if my wife even realized I had come. She reached out to me later, but I didn't respond. She had her family now. That was enough. I went back to the hotel. Lay down on the bed. At some point, my phone buzzed, an email from work, another deadline I had missed, another mistake I had made. I already know what's coming. It's only a matter of time before I lose my job to my marriage is gone. My son is gone. My home is being sold. My career is slipping through my fingers, and I don't care. I just sit here watching everything fall apart, and I can't bring myself to do anything about it. I used to think I was strong, that no matter how bad things got, I could push through. Now I don't see the point. So this is my last update. After this, I'm deleting everything. Because what's left to say? Second story. A kid bullied me at school, and my mom with savior complex took. Bully sighed, encouraged, and rewarded him with gifts, saying he needed more love and attention, neglecting me in the process and wondering why I hated her. There are moments in childhood that you never forget, some, because they're good, others, because they cut so deep that even decades later, the wound still aches when you think about them. This is one of those moments. I was 9 years old and I was being bullied, and I don't mean some light teasing or the usual kid roughhousing. I mean real targeted bully. Ethan was a year older, taller, stronger, and meaner. He made it his personal mission to make my life hell. He'd shove me in the halls, knock my books out of my hands, trip me during gym class, and worst of all, humiliate me in front of other kids just to hear them laugh. It was relentless, and the school useless. They had their us-usual list of excuses. He's just playing rough, ignore him and he'd stop. I tried. He didn't. One afternoon after Ethan pushed me so hard that I landed in a muddy puddle in front of half my class. I finally broke. I stormed home still soaked and humiliated and told my mother everything. I expected anger. I expected her to march down to the school and demand they do something. Maybe even call Ethan's parents. Instead, she just looked at me and said, "Why don't we invite him over for dinner?" I thought I misheard her. There was no way she could have just suggested that. Not after everything I just told her. But she had. I stood there waiting for her to realize how stupid that was, waiting for her to see how badly she just failed me. But she didn't. I was furious. I said no, absolutely not. But she didn't drop it. She kept pushing, kept insisting, and said just try. Sometimes people act out because they're hurting. I didn't give a damn if Ethan was hurting, I was hurting, and she was acting like that. Didn't matter, we argued. I yelled, she didn't budge, and in the end I caved. Not because I wanted to, but because I knew she wouldn't let it go. The next day at school was the worst moment of my life. I had to walk up to my bully and invite him to dinner like we were friends. I wanted to throw up. I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. He stared at me for a long moment, then shrugged. Yeah, okay. That night he came over. He looked different outside of school. Less quirky, more unsure. His eyes darted around like he was waiting for something bad to happen. Then came dinner. I had never seen someone eat the way Ethan did. He wasn't just hungry. He was inhaling his food, shoving it in like he thought someone might snatch it away. My mom didn't say anything, just kept refilling his plate. I hated watching it. Hated the way she was treating him like some honored guest when he was the reason I spent every day miserable after he left. I snapped. I told her how much I hated that she did this, that I felt humiliated. I expected her to at least acknowledge my feelings, to say she understood why I was upset. Instead, she just sighed and said being kind isn't always easy. That was it. No explanation, no apology. Just that the next day, Ethan was back to bullying me like nothing had happened. I told my mom, and instead of finally seeing reason, she doubled down. She handed me an extra bag of chocolates and told me to give them to him. I nearly lost my mind. I wanted to throw them in the trash, but I knew. My mom wouldn't let it go, so I did it just to shut her up. Ethan took them without a word, didn't even say thanks, and the bullying still the same, and my mom. She kept going, more chocolates, more little gifts, more insistence that I be the bigger person. I started hating her for it. I convinced myself that she didn't care about me at all, that she wanted Ethan as her son instead of me. It was the only explanation that made sense one night. I finally asked her outright, "Why do you care more about him than me?" She frowned and said that's not true, but it felt true. For the next few days I barely spoke to her. I felt like I was completely alone, bullied at school, ignored at home, and Ethan still the same, at least. That's what I thought, until one day he didn't push me in the hall, he didn't laugh at me, he just stood next to me quiet, almost like he was thinking about something. Then he said, "Your mom is nice." I had no idea what to say, and before I could respond, he just walked away. That was the first crack in the wall. Ethan's words stuck with me, not because they were profound or even particularly apologetic, but because they were different for the first time. He wasn't sneering, wasn't mocking me. He was just talking. I didn't know what to do with that. But I didn't trust it. Not yet. After years of torment, I wasn't about to believe a few vague words meant anything had actually changed. And for a while, I kept my guard up, waiting for him to go back to normal, to shove me in the hallway, to trip me in gym class, to humiliate me in front of everyone. Except he didn't. The shift wasn't dramatic. It wasn't like we suddenly became friends overnight. But things started slipping away, the pushing, the insults, the orchestrated embarrassments, instead of actively making my life hell. Ethan just existed near me. It felt just as bad, like he was lingering, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But then I started noticing things I had never paid attention to before, like how he never had lunch, how his clothes were always slightly too small, too worn, how no one ever picked him up from school, how his name was never mentioned at parent-teacher meetings. I don't know why it took me so long to realize what should have been obvious. And then one afternoon, while we were both waiting outside after school, he told me his home life was exactly what I had started to suspect. His parents didn't care about him, about where he was, about whether he ate or not. They weren't just neglectful. They were the kind of people who saw a kid as an inconvenience. He had grown up fighting for scraps of attention, learning that being mean got him noticed, that hurting others was better than being invisible. And my mom, she had been the first adult who ever showed him kindness, the first person who looked at him and saw more than just a troublemaker. It hit me like a punch to the gut, because all that anger I had directed at her, all the resentment I had built up, suddenly had nowhere to go. She had seen something I hadn't, had known that Ethan wasn't just a bully, but a kid who needed help. And instead of telling me outright, instead of explaining herself, she had used me to get to him. I still wasn't sure how I felt about that. On one hand, I understood it. She had wanted to help, and she had, but on the other, I hated that she had forced me into it, made me a part of her plan without ever considering how it would feel for me. I didn't say anything to her right away. I needed time to process it all, but Ethan changed after that conversation. He started hanging around me more, not in an annoying or pushy way, just as if he was testing the waters. It was awkward at first. We had spent so long on opposite sides of a war that neither of us knew how to act when the fighting stopped. But then little things started shifting. He picked me for his team in gym class. Something small, something no one else thought twice about. But for me, it meant everything. He started walking next to me instead of in front of me. He still made sarcastic comments and still rolled his eyes like everything annoyed him, but they weren't mean anymore. The first time we actually hung out outside of school. It wasn't planned, we just ended up in the same place at the same time. And instead of ignoring each other, we talked nothing serious, nothing deep, just two kids with nowhere better to be, and somehow, over time, that turned into a real friendship. It wasn't always easy. I had years of anger built up, and he had years of bad habits to break. But we met in the middle, both of us learning how to be something other than enemies. My mom never brought it up. Never asked for, and I told you so. She didn't need to. She just kept doing what she always did. Made sure there was extra food when Ethan came over, left out snacks she knew he liked. Treated him like he was just another kid instead of a project. The first time I let go of my resentment towards her was the night she made my favorite meal, the one she always cooked when she wanted to smooth things over. She never said it was an apology, never. Even mentioned the months of frustration I had gone through. But it was her way of making peace, and I let her. It's been 2 decades since then. Ethan has been my best friend for nearly my whole life. He was there for every big moment, every birthday, Every milestone, every late-night call when I needed someone to talk to, he was the best man at my wedding. When my mom passed away, he stood next to me at her funeral, looking just as devastated as I was. His life didn't magically fix itself. He had to fight for every bit of stability he has now. He worked his ARS off to escape the cycle he was born into, but through it all, we stayed close. I read a lot of stories on here about childhood bullies who never change, about people who stay cruel no matter what, and most of the time that's true. But sometimes life surprises you, and sometimes the person you hate the most becomes family comments. Comment 1. Nah, sorry, but I don't buy this redemption nonsense. Your bully got a free pass because he had a rough home life. Plenty of kids grow up in abusive households and don't turn into violent little tyrants. Ethan only changed when it benefited him, not because he felt remorse. He latched on to you because your mom became his free meal ticket and you let him weasel his way into your life. You think he became family, but let's be real. He took and took and took, and you were just too conditioned to stop giving. He didn't become a better person, he just got better at blending in. Comment 2. This is honestly one of the most beautiful redemption arcs I've ever read. You had every right to be angry at your mom, but in the end, she saw something you couldn't at the time, and Ethan, wow. He didn't just say sorry and expect forgiveness. He actually put in the effort to change. That's rare. So many stories end in bitterness, but yours turned into something so much bigger: true friendship, even family. Your mom would be so proud of the bond you both built. Thank you for sharing this. Comment 3. You were relentlessly. Your mom basically handed you over as a peace offering, and instead of protecting her own kid, she played savior to the actual abuser, and you just forgave her for what she let you suffer, ignored your pain, and forced you to befriend the one person who made your life miserable. That's not kindness, that's emotional negligence, and now years later you're acting like this is some heartwarming story, instead of what it really is, a case study in parental failure. She didn't teach you compassion. She taught you to swallow your own hurt to fix someone else. That's not noble, that's tragic. Third story, am I in the wrong? After getting angry at my boyfriend for letting his friend see me naked. Context: happened a few days ago. I and my boyfriend were staying in a hotel with his friend and his wife. We've been together 3 years. We were all drinking. And after a while, his friend and wife left. I and my boyfriend had drunk sex, and then went to bed. After a while, his friend came back alone. My boyfriend got up, which woke me up. I was half asleep and heard the friend say something about my body. My boyfriend asked if he wanted to see. I was on my side away from them and heard them walking over. I panicked and didn't know what to do. Was I supposed to jump up and let them know I was listening? Freak out. I have severe anxiety, so this caused an attack. I froze, and he lifted up the covers I was under at it. I was naked. I confronted him the next day, but he said I wanted him to see me because I didn't stop him and he should be upset at me but is understanding and I should be too, so we can let it go. Am I an Arl? Can I not be upset? Because I didn't stop it. Update. Thanks everyone so much for the support, advice. I've been with this guy forever. And we were talking about starting to do foster care in marriage. I thought I was crazy. And this wasn't as big a deal as I was making it since I wasn't touched or anything. I'd like to make an update after I talk with him again when you make one. Do you just add it in here or make a new post? I'm new to this, to everyone saying it's ultimately my fault for not doing anything. Mental illness is paralyzing. I was as a kid, and this was the same way my body made me or wouldn't let me react. I wasn't sure at first, but I know I didn't do anything wrong. I'm sorry if it seemed like an obvious answer. It's hard to accept these things when it's someone you had a future with. More info. I am hesitant to tell the friend's wife because they have a baby together. I know she should know the kind of man he is, but it makes me think of how I went through divorce, but then again, would he be a good father to the baby girl anyway? Top comments: Metastasy Uncore D. He says I wanted him to see me because I didn't stop him, and he should be upset at me. But his understanding this is the start of the part of your relationship that later in life will make you think, man, I should have ended it after that first incident. Steve Radley, so true, very manipulative behavior, and not how you behave to anyone, let alone a partner of 3 years. Bristle precisely. Oh my F God, trust your gut. Our significant other can have any manner of kinks and whatnot, but he did not even ask for your consent. Fixed Uncore 978. Leave tell the friend's wife, PD and Fies. Yes, that's what I was going to say. She deserves to know that her scumbag husband was willing to let Op's boyfriend's chai show off her vulnerable, naked, drunken friend in a hotel room. Edgestander not just let, but apparently leave his wife and make a special trip down to Op's room. For apparently nothing but this update rared it when my boyfriend got home. I told him we had to talk. He agreed I was going to tell him how messed up this was, and I am telling his friend's wife, but he talked before me. Turns out I don't need to tell her because he already did. She was upset and asked him to never contact her or her husband again, so I won't know where that side is going. He apologized and said it was a drunken mistake, but he knows that doesn't make it right or hurt me less. We had talked about 3 ways before with women, and he didn't think I minded, but now understands I didn't agree. He said he never thought he'd do something like that, and he attacked me so much when I confronted him because he knew he was in the wrong, but didn't want me to think of him as that guy. He was completely remorseful, and I even saw him cry for the 2nd time in 3 years. He said he thinks maybe it was some drunken pride thing over not being able to do much with me. This is because he does have some erectile dysfunction problems, and I have had to help him with his self-esteem, as he would often say, "I just want to be able to please you when we could only have as X once every few months." Even so, he went to his parents for now. We had moved to a new state together 2 years ago where they live, but I don't really know anyone I'm looking at playing tickets to my hometown until this incident. We have had a perfect relationship. We always hung out and had great times. Only once did we ever have a huge fight. Little disagreements, but nothing crazy. He did everything he could, no matter how annoying or hard, to help my mental illness. He wanted to pay for me to go back to school. He believed in me and supported me when I started my writing. He helped me come to terms with my abuse and move on all the nights he stayed up with me while I cried. I wish this never happened. I don't know if we'll get back together, but he's giving me my space and being respectful. I definitely need to be away from him for a while and think about this. He says he'll give me all the time I need, and if I can forgive him, he'll be waiting for me. Thanks everyone for the help in getting me through this time, to all the guys messaging me to say it's my fault and I should be happy. He wanted to show me off. I hope your DCK gets so dry it falls off. Edit just to add about the drinking. We had a problem with this before where he'd get drunk and act very angry. Rude towards me, going as far as insulting me. We talked about it and he no longer drinks regularly. We just drink with friends now. So I definitely think that is a big part of it. This was a couple of years ago. It also showed me that he is willing to change for the better to keep us going. But this is also a lot worse than just being a drunk butthead. I also saw the conversation and made sure it was between him and her. So I know he was honest about what happened with the wife. Edit. His friend messaged me and said I had no right to make my boyfriend tell on him and refuse to see him. I haven't replied, but this does show me my boyfriend is trying top comments. Mention it all to all the guys messaging me to say it's my fault and I should be happy. He wanted to show me off. I hope your dick gets so dry it falls off. I just want to reiterate that this is not your fault. And anyone messaging you otherwise has serious problems, Lear. But also may it be pointed out that that's the best curse ever monitoring. It's good that he's apologetic and aware of what he did wrong. But also kudos to you for keeping your thoughts clear and taking your time on it. Remorse alone isn't and shouldn't be enough to regain your trust. That's entirely up to you. Best wishes to you, and stay strong. P-play. I agree with this. I think he is in no way justified by his reasons for doing what he did. However, you know the relationship better than anyone. So it is up to you whether or not you want to give him a chance. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.